The stars looked different from inside the alien ship. Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the strange metal wall. It seemed to glow with its own light. 3 months ago, he was leading his crew through routine space exploration. Now he was a prisoner on a ship bigger than any city he had ever seen. The engine failure had happened so fast. One moment the new frontier was cruising through the Vega system, and the next moment alarms were screaming and sparks were flying from every control panel. Jake's crew of 12 had barely managed to get into their emergency pods before the ship exploded. They thought they were going to die in the cold darkness of space. Then the aliens found them. The Alterians looked almost human, but their skin was pale blue, and they had no hair anywhere on their bodies. They were tall and thin, with long fingers that moved too fast when they worked with their strange tools. Their leader, Dr. Kelvon Thrix, spoke perfect English through some kind of translation device that floated near his head. "You are safe now," Dr. Thrix had said when they first brought the humans aboard. "We are scientists. We study life forms from across the galaxy. You are the first of your species we have encountered." That had been 3 weeks ago. At first, everything seemed fine. The aliens gave them food. It tasted like nothing but kept them healthy. They had comfortable rooms with beds that adjusted to their bodies. The aliens asked lots of questions about Earth and human culture. Jake's crew was happy to answer. They thought they were guests, but then the medical tests started. "We need to understand your biology," Dr. Thrix explained. "All species in the galaxy have some form of rapid healing. We need to see how your healing works so we can help you better." Engineer Lisa Parker had volunteered first. She was brave like that, always wanting to help her crewmates. The aliens took small samples of her blood and skin. They scanned her body with lights that made her feel warm. Everything seemed normal. Pilot Danny Rogers went next. He joked that he had crashed so many training flights back on Earth that few alien tests could not be worse. The aliens seemed to like his humor. They laughed at his stories about flight school while they ran their tests. But when Marine Sergeant Carlos Martinez volunteered, something went wrong. Carlos was tough. He had been through 3 wars and more training exercises than he could count. Scars covered his arms and chest from old battles. He figured alien doctors could not do anything worse than what he had already survived. "Just take what you need, Doc," Carlos told Dr. Thrix. "I have been cut up before." Dr. Thrix activated a device that looked like a silver pen. He pressed it against Carlos's arm. The device was supposed to take a small tissue sample, just like the others had done. But something was different this time. The device cut much deeper than it should have. Blood poured from Carlos's arm. The wound was 3 inches long and deep enough to see muscle underneath. Dr. Thrix looked confused and worried. "This should not have happened," he said to his assistant, Dr. Yinth Coral. The device was set for standard tissue collection. Carlos looked down at his bleeding arm. Jake expected him to scream or pass out. Instead, Carlos did something that made all the aliens step back in shock. He got angry. Not just angry, furious. His face turned red and his muscles tensed up. His breathing got faster and harder. The machines monitoring his body started beeping frantically. "What is happening to him?" Dr. Coral asked, staring at the readings on his screen. Carlos's body temperature was rising. His heart was beating twice as fast as normal. Chemicals were flooding his bloodstream that the aliens had never seen before. But strangest of all, Carlos was not getting weaker from the injury. He was getting stronger. "Son of a gun," Carlos said through gritted teeth. That actually hurt. He looked at the wound on his arm like it had personally insulted him. "You aliens don't know how to do anything right, do you?" The bleeding slowed down on its own. Carlos's body was already starting to work on the wound. But it was not healing. the way the aliens expected. Other species they had studied would grow new tissue to replace what was damaged. Their bodies would work to restore everything back to exactly how it was before. Carlos's body was doing something different. Instead of just growing new skin, it was building something tougher. The edges of the wound were already turning into thick, hard tissue. His body was not trying to fix the damage. It was trying to make sure the same damage could never happen. Again, fascinating, Dr. Thrix whispered. He was taking notes as fast as he could type. His cellular response is completely different from any species we have documented. Is he in pain? Dr. Coral asked. Carlos heard the question and laughed. It was not a happy laugh. Pain? Doc, this is nothing. You want to see pain. You should have seen what the rebels on Proxima did to prisoners. This is just a scratch. But Carlos was lying, and Jake could tell. The wound was serious. It should have put Carlos on the ground. Instead, it seemed to have awakened something inside him. His eyes were sharper. His movements were more controlled. He looked like a man getting ready for a fight. Captain, Carlos said quietly to Jake, something is not right here. These aliens don't understand what they just did. Jake nodded. He was starting to understand too. The aliens studied species that healed fast and easy. They were used to creatures that could fix any damage quickly. They had no idea how to handle a species that responded to injury by getting mad and getting ready to fight back. Dr. Thrix was still taking notes. Subject shows increased aggression following tissue trauma. Vital signs suggest heightened alertness rather than shock response. Most unusual. Over the next few hours, Jake watched Carlos's wound change. It was not healing, like a normal cut would heal. Instead, Carlos's body was building a thick, tough scar that looked like armor. The new tissue was harder and stronger than the original skin had been. How do you feel? Dr. Coral asked Carlos during one of his checkups. Like I could punch through a wall, Carlos answered honestly. This thing on my arm itches like crazy, but I feel great. Better than I have in weeks. The aliens exchanged worried looks. This was not how injured creatures were supposed to act. Injured creatures were supposed to be weak and focused on recovery. Carlos looked like he was ready to take on the whole ship by himself. Jake realized that the aliens had made a big mistake. They thought humans were like all the other species they had studied. They thought humans would be easy to handle and quick to heal from any testing they wanted to do. But humans were different. Humans did not just heal from wounds. They learned from them. They got angry about them. They built stronger bodies to make sure the same wounds could not happen again. And right now, Carlos looked like he was learning a lot. Doc, Carlos said to Dr. Thrix with a smile that did not reach his eyes. When do we do the next test? Because I am just getting started. Dr. Thrix looked at his notes and then at Carlos's scarred, angry face. For the first time since the humans had been brought aboard, the alien scientist looked nervous. Jake had a bad feeling that things were about to get much worse before they got better. But looking at Carlos, who seemed to be getting tougher and meaner by the hour, Jake also had a feeling that maybe that was exactly what they needed. Dr. Kelvon Thrix could not sleep. For 5 days, he had been studying the readings from Carlos Martinez's injury, and nothing made sense. Every night, he would lie in his chamber staring at the data, trying to understand what he had witnessed. In his 40 years of studying alien biology, Dr. Thrix had examined over 300 different species. All of them followed the same basic pattern when injured. Their bodies would focus all energy on healing. They would become quiet and still to save strength. Their cellular regeneration would kick in and restore damaged tissue to its original state. Humans did none of these things. Carlos's wound had completely closed, but the scar tissue was twice as thick as normal skin. Medical scans showed that the new tissue was denser and tougher than what had been there before. Even stranger, Carlos seemed happier and more energetic than he had been before the injury. "We need to understand this," Dr. Thrix told his assistant, Dr. Yinth Coral, as they walked through the ship's medical bay. "This could change everything we know about evolutionary biology." Dr. Coral nodded. She was a specialist in how different species thought and acted. Her job was to understand the minds behind the biology. The human's psychological response is just as unusual as his physical response. Most injured creatures become docile. This one became more aggressive. "We need more data," Dr. Thrix decided. "But we must be more careful this time. We cannot have accidents like what happened with the soldier." They chose Communications Officer Beth Adams as their next subject. Beth was smaller than Carlos and seemed calmer. She had volunteered to help translate human languages for the alien computers. Dr. Thrix thought she would be easier to study. Beth sat in the medical chair, looking nervous but determined. "My crewmates said you need to understand how we heal," she said. "I want to help if I can." Dr. Thrix activated a different device this time. It was designed to make small, controlled cuts on the subject's arm. The cuts would be shallow and precise. There should be no accidents. The first cut was barely deep enough to draw blood. Beth winced but did not cry out. Dr. Thrix watched his instruments carefully as her body began to respond. Again. The response was all wrong. Beth's heart rate increased. Her breathing got faster. Chemicals flooded her system that should not have been there. But most importantly, she did not become weak or sleepy like other species would. Instead, she became more alert. "How do you feel?" Dr. Coral asked. "Angry," Beth said honestly. "I know you are trying to help, but this hurts and I do not like it." Dr. Thrix made another cut, slightly deeper. Beth's hands clenched into fists. Her jaw tightened. The readings on his instruments spiked even higher. "Interesting," he muttered. "Subject shows increased hostility with each trauma event." But Beth surprised him by speaking. "I can hear you talking about me like I am not here. That makes me even more angry." Over the next hour, Dr. Thrix made 6 more small cuts on Beth's arms. Each time, her body's response got stronger. Each time, she got more alert and more hostile. By the end of the session, Beth looked like she was ready to fight someone. But the strangest part came in the days that followed. Beth's cuts healed faster than Dr. Thrix expected, but not in the way he had seen with other species. Instead of growing soft new skin, her body built thick, tough scar tissue over each wound. The scars were not just marks showing where she had been hurt. They were improvements. When Dr. Thrix tested the healed areas, he found they were much harder to cut than normal human skin. It was like Beth's body had decided that if someone was going to hurt her in those spots, it would make sure they could not hurt her the same way twice. "This is not healing," Dr. Coral observed as she watched Beth during her recovery. "This is adaptation." Dr. Thrix invited more scientists to observe the humans. Word had spread through the ship about the strange new species that responded to injury by getting stronger and meaner. Soon, researchers from 12 different alien races were crowding into the medical bay to see the humans for themselves. The Krillians were a warrior race known for their toughness in battle. Their representative, General Thurok, watched Beth's scars form with amazement. "My soldiers are trained to endure pain," General Thurok said. "But when they are injured, they need time to recover. This human female seems to get more dangerous after being hurt." Dr. Thrix nodded. "We have never seen anything like it. Watch this." He showed the general readings from both Carlos and Beth. After their injuries, both humans showed increased muscle density, improved reaction times, and heightened awareness. Their bodies were not just healing, they were upgrading. "But why?" asked Dr. Zenth, a scientist from a peaceful species that had mastered regeneration millions of years ago. Why would evolution create a healing response that makes the creature more aggressive? Dr. Coral had been thinking about this question for days. I believe it is because humans evolved differently than our species. Most of us evolved healing abilities to avoid conflict. Humans seem to have evolved healing abilities to prepare for more conflict. The alien scientists were fascinated, but also worried. They had never encountered a species that treated injury as practice for future fights. Captain Jake Morrison noticed the change in his crew members too. Carlos and Beth were both different after their sessions with the aliens. They were more alert, more focused, and definitely more suspicious of their captors. "Captain," Beth said quietly during one of their meals, "I have been paying attention during my sessions with the doctors. I think I understand their language now." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What are they saying?" "They are not just studying us," Beth said. "They are trying to figure out our limits. They want to know how much damage we can take before we break." Carlos leaned forward. "That matches what I overheard too. They keep talking about finding our breaking point." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of breaking point?" "The point where we stop getting stronger and start getting weaker," Carlos explained. "The problem is, I do not think we have one." Over the following weeks, Dr. Thrix continued his experiments. He brought in other crew members one by one. Each time, the results were the same. Humans did not respond to injury like other species. They got angry. They got stronger. And they seemed to remember every detail of what had been done to them. Pilot Danny Rogers started memorizing the layout of the medical bay during his sessions. Engineer Lisa Parker began studying the alien medical equipment while they used it. On her, Navigator Amy Chun used her time in the testing chamber to listen to alien conversations and learn their security procedures. The aliens thought they were studying human biology. The humans were studying the aliens right back. "There is something else," Dr. Coral told Dr. Thrix after observing the humans for 3 weeks. "They are not just individually adapting to injury. They are sharing information with each other." Dr. Thrix looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Watch them interact," Dr. Coral said. "Each human who undergoes testing shares details with the others. They are learning from each other's pain. It is like they are treating our experiments as intelligence gathering." Dr. Thrix watched the human crew during their next meal. Beth was quietly describing the medical equipment to Carlos. Danny was drawing diagrams of the ship's corridors on his napkin. Lisa was explaining how the alien computers work to the others. "They are not just healing from our tests," Dr. Thrix realized with growing alarm. "They are learning from them." Dr. Coral nodded grimly. "And each lesson is making them more dangerous." That night, Dr. Thrix updated his research notes with a new observation that would later become famous throughout the galaxy. Human healing appears to be less about restoration and more about preparation. Each injury teaches them how to prevent or counter similar injuries in the future. They do not simply recover from trauma, they weaponize it. The news about the humans spread through the Galactic Federation faster than Dr. Thrix had expected. Within 2 weeks, his research ship was crowded with scientists from across the galaxy. They all wanted to see the species that got stronger. When it was hurt, Dr. Thrix felt proud and worried at the same time. This was the discovery of his career, but he was starting to think he might be in over his head. The most important visitor was Professor Vex Corvian from the High Science Council. Professor Corvian had studied evolution for over 200 years. He had seen species adapt over millions of years, but never in real time. "Show me," Professor Corvian demanded as soon as he arrived on the ship. Dr. Thrix led him to the observation room where Security Chief Ryan Brooks was being prepared for testing. Ryan was the biggest and strongest of the human crew. He had volunteered. when Dr. Thrix explained that they needed to understand human limits. "We are going to test bone density today," Dr. Thrix explained to the professor. "We want to see how human bones respond to stress." Ryan lay on the examination table, looking calm. He had talked to Carlos and Beth about what to expect. They had told him to pay attention to everything and remember it all. "Just get it over with, Doc," Ryan said. "I have been through worse." Dr. Thrix activated a device that would put pressure on Ryan's arm bone. The machine was designed to test how much force different species could handle before their bones started to crack. For most species, the test would stop as soon as any damage was detected, but the machine was calibrated for aliens who healed quickly. It was not made for humans. The pressure increased slowly. Ryan's face tightened, but he did not make a sound. The readings showed his bone starting to develop tiny fractures. In any other species, this would trigger an automatic healing response, and the subject would become drowsy and still. Ryan did the opposite. His heart rate spiked, his muscles tensed. His breathing became controlled and focused. The pain seemed to make him more awake, not less. "Remarkable," Professor Corvian whispered. "His body is preparing for combat, not rest." The machine kept increasing pressure. Ryan's arm bone developed more fractures, but something incredible was happening. His body was already starting to reinforce the damaged areas. New bone material was forming around the cracks, making them stronger than they had been before. "Stop the test," Dr. Coral said suddenly. "Look at these readings." Dr. Thrix checked his instruments and gasped. Ryan's bone was not just healing from the fractures. It was rebuilding itself to be denser and stronger. The damaged areas were becoming harder than normal human bone. "How do you feel?" Professor Corvian asked Ryan. Ryan moved his arm carefully. "It hurts, but it feels solid. Like I could punch through a wall with this arm now." Over the next 3 days, they watched Ryan's arm heal in ways that should have been impossible. The fractures disappeared, but the new bone was 30% denser than it had been before. Medical scans showed that Ryan's entire skeletal system was starting to adapt, becoming stronger to support the improved arm bone. "This is not healing," Professor Corvian announced to the gathered scientists. "This is directed evolution. The human body is upgrading itself in response to damage." But the changes were not just physical. Ryan was different mentally, too. He was more focused and alert. He asked detailed questions about the alien equipment. He wanted to know how everything worked. During his recovery time, Ryan started doing exercises that made no sense to the aliens. Instead of resting like any sensible injured creature would do, he was making his body work harder. "Why are you doing that?" Dr. Coral asked as she watched Ryan doing push-ups with his recently fractured arm. "Testing it," Ryan said between exercises. "Need to know what this arm can do now. If you are going to make me stronger, I want to know how much stronger." The aliens were beginning to understand that they had made a serious mistake. They thought they were studying human biology. Instead, they were training humans to be more dangerous. Captain Jake Morrison was also changing. He had not been subjected to any tests yet, but watching his crew members adapt was affecting him too. He was asking more questions about the ship, paying closer attention to alien routines, and spending more time talking quietly with his crew. "Captain," Communications Officer Lara Bell said during one of their private conversations, "I have been listening to the aliens talk. They are planning bigger tests." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "What kind of tests?" "They want to see what happens if they hurt us more seriously. They think we have a breaking point where we will stop getting stronger and start getting weaker." "Do we?" Jake asked. Laura smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "I do not think so, sir. I think we just keep getting madder." The aliens were having the same conversation in their own meetings. Professor Corvian had called together all the scientists to discuss what they were. "Seeing, the humans are not responding like any species we have studied," he said. "They do not have a traditional healing response. They have what I can only call a combat adaptation response." General Thurok, the Krillian warrior, was particularly interested. "My species trains for years to develop the kind of bone density we are seeing in the human called Ryan. He achieved it in 3 days through sheer biological stubbornness." Dr. Zenth, from the peaceful regeneration species, was worried. What if we cannot find their breaking point? What if they just keep getting stronger no matter what we do to them? "Then we stop the experiments," Dr. Thrix said quickly. "We are scientists, not torturers." But Professor Corvian shook his head. "We cannot stop now. This discovery could change everything we know about biology and evolution. We need to understand the limits of this ability." The next test subject was mechanic Pete Johnson. Pete was small and wiry, very different from the muscular Ryan. The aliens wanted to see if the adaptation response was the same in all humans. They decided to test Pete's nervous system by using electrical stimulation. The idea was to see how human nerves responded to damage and if they could adapt like bones and skin did. Pete sat in the testing chair, trying to look brave. He had heard about what happened to the others and knew it was going to hurt. But he also knew that his crewmates were counting on him to learn everything he could. "Just remember," Carlos had told him before the test, "pain is temporary, but what you learn while you are in pain, that lasts forever." The electrical current started low and gradually increased. Pete's body jerked and his muscles contracted, but he stayed conscious and alert. The aliens expected him to become confused and disoriented as the electrical damage affected his nervous system. Instead, Pete became more focused. His brain seemed to adapt to the electrical interference by creating new pathways around the damaged areas. Within hours, he was thinking more clearly than he had before the test started. "This is impossible," Dr. Coral muttered as she watched. Pete's brain scans. His neural network is rebuilding itself in real time. The electrical damage is forcing his brain to become more efficient. Pete was also doing something the aliens had not expected. He was using the electrical current to understand how their equipment worked. Every shock taught him something about alien technology. "Hey, Doc," Pete said during a break in the testing. "This machine you are using, it runs on a quantum field generator, right? I can feel how the current flows." Dr. Thrix stared at Pete in shock. "How could you possibly know that?" Pete grinned despite his pain. "Your electricity talks to my nerves. My nerves talk to my brain. My brain listens real good." That night, Dr. Thrix made a new entry in his research log. The humans are not just adapting to our tests. They are learning from them. Each experiment teaches them more about our technology and our methods. We may have seriously underestimated this species. Professor Corvian read the log entry and felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. Not fear of the humans specifically, but fear of what they might become if the experiments continued that the humans were evolving. And they were doing it on purpose. Dr. Thrix made his biggest mistake on a Tuesday morning. He decided that the humans were healing too fast because they were helping each other. He thought that if he separated them, their strange adaptation abilities would work even better. "We need to isolate the subjects," he told Dr. Corral during their morning meeting. "They are influencing each other's responses. For proper scientific study, each human should be tested alone." Dr. Coral looked uncertain. "Are you sure that is wise?" "The humans seem to function better as a group." "Exactly," Dr. Thrix said. "We need to see what they can do individually without the emotional support of their pack." Professor Corvian agreed with the plan. Isolation often increases the stress response in test subjects. This should give us better data about their individual limits. They started by moving engineer Kevin Walsh to a separate section of the ship. Kevin was quiet and thoughtful, not one of the more aggressive crew members. Dr. Thrix thought he would be the easiest to handle alone. Kevin did not like being separated from his friends. For 3 days, he sat in his new room, asking to see his crewmates. The aliens told him the separation was temporary, just for better testing conditions. On the 4th day, Dr. Thrix began Kevin's individual tests. He wanted to study how human muscle tissue adapted to damage. The plan was to create small tears in Kevin's arm muscles and watch how they rebuilt themselves. The test went normally at first. Kevin's muscles showed the same strange healing response they had seen in other humans. Instead of just repairing the damage, his body was building stronger muscle fibers to replace what had been torn. But then Dr. Coral made an announcement that changed everything. "We are also testing the female called Jenny Foster in the next room," she told Dr. Thrix. "We want to see if human reproductive biology affects their healing response." Kevin heard this through the thin walls between the testing rooms. Jenny was the crew's medic and one of Kevin's closest friends. The idea of the aliens hurting her made something snap inside Kevin's mind. "What are you doing to Jenny?" Kevin demanded, trying to sit up from the testing table. "Nothing harmful," Dr. Thrix said quickly. "Just some basic tissue samples." But Kevin could hear Jenny crying out in pain through the wall. The sound hit him like a physical blow. His heart rate spiked higher than any of the aliens had ever recorded. His body temperature rose so fast that the monitoring equipment started giving warnings. "Fascinating," Professor Corvian said, watching the readings. "The subject is having an extreme stress response to another human's distress." Kevin was not just stressed. He was furious in a way that scared even him. Every muscle in his body was tensing. His recently damaged arm muscles were rebuilding themselves at 3 times the normal speed. His body was preparing for violence. "Let me see her," Kevin said, and his voice sounded different. Harder. More dangerous. Dr. Thrix shook his head. That would compromise the test conditions. Kevin looked directly at Dr. Thrix, and the alien scientist felt a chill run down his spine. Kevin's eyes had changed. They looked like the eyes of a predator getting ready to hunt. "Doc," Kevin said very quietly, "you have no idea what you just started." Over the next hour, Kevin's body underwent changes that the aliens had never seen before. His muscle density increased by 40%. His bone structure became denser. His nervous system started producing chemicals that improved his reaction, time and pain tolerance. But the most dangerous change was in Kevin's mind. He stopped answering the aliens' questions. Instead, he started asking his own questions about the ship's layout, security systems, and crew schedules. "Why do you want to know that?" Dr. Coral asked when Kevin inquired about shift changes. "Just curious," Kevin said, but his smile was cold and calculating. While Kevin was changing, other crew members were having their own reactions to being separated. Captain Jake Morrison had been placed in isolation 3 days earlier. He spent his time doing exercises and thinking about escape plans. Pilot Scott Davis was being tested in the neurology lab. The aliens were studying his brain responses while they showed him images of various scenarios. What they did not realize was that Scott was memorizing the ship's computer systems that he could see reflected in the monitoring screens. Communications Officer Laura Bell was in the chemistry lab, where the aliens were testing how human lungs adapted to different gas mixtures. Laura was holding her breath longer than should have been possible, and using the time to study the alien air recycling systems. Each human was learning something different about the ship and its crew. They were turning their isolation into an intelligence-gathering operation. The breaking point came when Dr. Thrix decided to test human protective instincts. He wanted to see what would happen if the humans thought one of their group was in serious danger. He chose botanist Rachel Stone for the test. Rachel was small and gentle, the kind of person who made everyone want to protect her. Dr. Thrix planned to make her scream loudly enough for the other humans to hear, then study their stress responses. The plan backfired in the worst possible way. When Rachel's screams echoed through the ship's corridors, every isolated human had the same reaction. Their bodies went into what Dr. Coral would later classify as a berserker state. Kevin was the first to break free. The restraints holding him to the testing table were designed for creatures that became weak when injured. They were not designed for a human whose muscles had grown 40% stronger in the last few hours. Kevin tore through the restraints like they were made of paper. He grabbed Dr. Thrix by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "Where is she?" Kevin demanded. Doctor. Thrix could barely speak. Section ... 7. Chemistry lab ... Kevin dropped the alien and ran toward the door. It was locked, but Kevin punched through the metal barrier like it was cardboard. His reinforced bones and enhanced muscles turned his fists into battering rams. The ship's security alarms started blaring as Kevin fought his way through the corridors. Behind him, other humans were breaking out of their own testing chambers. Captain Morrison kicked down his door. Scott Davis short-circuited his room's electronics with equipment he had built from pieces of testing gear. Lovra Bell used her knowledge of the ship's air system to flood the corridor with knockout gas that affected aliens, but not humans. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Their test subjects had turned into an army of angry, enhanced humans who knew their ship better than they did. Dr. Coral watched the security feeds in horror. "They are not just escaping," she told Professor Corvian. "They are hunting us." Kevin reached the chemistry lab first. He found Rachel strapped to a table with several deep cuts on her arms. 2 alien scientists were taking notes while she bled. "Step away from her," Kevin said in a voice that made both aliens freeze in terror. They stepped away. Kevin gently freed Rachel from the restraints and helped her stand up. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Rachel nodded, tears in her eyes. "I am now." Kevin looked at the 2 alien scientists. His enhanced muscles were still pumped full of combat chemicals. His reinforced bones were ready for violence. His adapted nervous system was running at peak efficiency. "You hurt my friend," Kevin said. The aliens ran. By the time Captain Morrison reached them, Kevin was helping Rachel walk while the chemistry lab burned behind them. Kevin had not just rescued Rachel. He had destroyed months of alien research and learned enough about their technology to sabotage their entire ship. "Status report," Captain Morrison said. Kevin smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "The aliens just taught us everything we need to know about their ship, their technology, and their weaknesses. And what did we learn? We learned that they made us stronger, smarter, and angrier," Kevin said. "And now we are going home." Captain Jake Morrison stood in the alien ship's command center, looking at screens he now understood thanks to weeks of painful lessons. Around him, his crew worked with deadly efficiency to take control of the vessel that had been their prison. 3 months ago, they had been rescued space travelers. Now they were something else entirely. Something harder, something angrier, something the galaxy had never seen before. "Scott, how are we doing with navigation?" Jake asked. Pilot Scott Davis looked up from an alien control panel, his fingers moving across interfaces that should have been impossible for a human to understand. "Got it, Captain. The electrical tests they did on my brain taught me how their quantum navigation works. I can plot a course back to Earth." "Pete, what about engines?" Mechanic Pete Johnson grinned as sparks flew from the panel he was rewiring. "The shocks they gave me showed me exactly how their power systems work. I can give you full speed. Plus, I rigged their weapons to overload if they try to use them against us." Jake nodded. His crew had turned their torture into education. Every test the aliens had performed had taught the humans something new about alien technology. Every injury had made them stronger and smarter. Kevin, how is Rachel doing? Kevin. Walsh looked up from where he was helping botanist Rachel Stone with her wounds. His enhanced muscles made him look twice as big as he had been when they first arrived. She is healing fast, Captain. Her cuts are already forming protective scar tissue. Give her a few days, and she will be tougher than when we started. That was the thing about humans that the aliens still did not understand. They did not just heal from damage. They improved because of it. Dr. Thrix and Dr. Coral were tied up in the corner of the command center. Professor Corvian sat nearby, looking defeated and confused. The aliens had become prisoners on their own research ship. I do not understand, Professor Corvian said to Jake. We were trying to help you. We wanted to learn about your species, so we could assist other humans if we found them. Jake looked at the alien scientist with eyes that had seen too much pain. You were torturing us. You called it research, but you were cutting us up and hurting us to satisfy your curiosity. But you are stronger now, Dr. Thrix protested. Our tests improved you. Surely you can see the benefits. Communications Officer Beth Adams laughed, but there was no humor in it. Her arms were covered in thick scars that made her skin look like armor. You think we should thank you for hurting us? You do not understand, Dr. Corral said desperately. In our society, when someone helps you become stronger, it is considered a great gift. In our society, said Marine Sergeant Carlos Martinez, his own scars visible on every exposed part of his body. When someone hurts your friends, you hurt them back. Carlos looked different now. Months of testing had turned him into something that scared even his own crewmates sometimes. His bones were denser than stone. His muscles were like steel cables. His nervous system processed pain and turned it into rage-fueled strength. But it was not just the physical changes that made him dangerous. It was the way he thought now. Every movement was calculated. Every glance assessed weaknesses. The aliens had tried to study him, and instead they had created a perfect human weapon. What are you going to do with us? Dr. Thrix asked. Jake considered the question carefully. Part of him wanted revenge. Part of him wanted to make the aliens feel some of the pain they had inflicted. But that was not who he was, even after everything they had done to him and his crew. We are going home, Jake said finally, and you are going to help us get there. And then? Then you are going to destroy all your research about humans. Every file, every recording, every piece of data you collected while you were torturing us. Professor Corvian looked shocked. But this research could benefit the entire galaxy. The applications for medicine and evolutionary science are enormous. Engineer Lisa Parker spoke up from where she was working on the ship's communication systems. The applications for weapons and torture are pretty enormous, too. We are not going to let you turn our pain into tools for hurting others. Lisa had been one of the first to volunteer for testing, back when they thought the aliens were trying to help. Now her skin showed the results of dozens of procedures, each scar a reminder of lessons learned the hard way. Besides, added Navigator Amy Chun as she plotted their course home, you did not just study our healing. You studied how we think, how we work together, how we protect each other. That information could be used against any humans you find in the future. Amy was right. The aliens had learned that humans were pack animals who became more dangerous when their friends were threatened. They had learned that humans shared information and worked together even under extreme stress. They had learned that human loyalty made them willing to sacrifice themselves for their crewmates. All of that information could be used to manipulate or control other humans. Jake was not going to let that happen. You will also send a message to your Galactic Federation, Jake continued. You will tell them that humans are not to be captured or experimented on. Ever. They will not believe us, Dr. Coral said. They will think we are exaggerating. Security Chief Ryan Brooks spoke from where he was monitoring the ship's security systems. His enhanced skeleton made him look like a human tank. And you better be real convincing. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Jake watched his crew continue to change and adapt. Their bodies were healing from months of testing, but the healing process was making them stronger than they had been before any of it started. More importantly, they were working together better than any crew Jake had ever commanded. The shared experience of pain and survival had bonded them in ways that normal training never could have achieved. Captain, Communications Officer Lavra Bell, called from her station. I am picking up Earth signals. We are almost home. Jake felt a mixture of relief and worry. They were going home, but they were not the same people who had left. The aliens had changed them in ways that might never be fully understood. When Earth's space traffic control contacted them, Jake tried to explain what had happened. It was not easy. How do you tell people that you were captured by aliens who tried to study human healing by torturing you until you became stronger than any human had ever been before? The debriefing took days. Earth's military and scientific leaders wanted to understand everything about the alien technology and the changes that had happened to the crew. They were particularly interested in the physical enhancements that the testing had produced. We need to study these changes, said General Patricia Hayes, the head of Earth's Defense Command. If humans can be made stronger through controlled stress and injury, we need to understand how. Jake shook his head firmly. No, we are not going to repeat what the aliens did to us. We are not going to hurt people to make them stronger. But the applications for military training, for medicine, for human enhancement. General, Jake interrupted, we got stronger because we got angry. We got angry because our friends were being hurt. You cannot replicate that in a laboratory. And you should not want to. The alien research was destroyed as promised. Dr. Thrix, Dr. Coral, and Professor Corvian kept their word, erasing every file and recording from their databases. They returned to their own worlds with strict orders from the Galactic Federation. To avoid human space. But word spread anyway. Across the galaxy, other species began to hear stories about the humans who did not heal normally. The species that got stronger when it was hurt. The species that turned pain into power and injury into improvement. Most alien races decided that humans were too dangerous to approach. A few became curious enough to seek them out. But they all learned the same lesson that Dr. Thrix had learned. Humans do not just survive damage. They learn from it. They adapt to it. They use it to become something more than they were before. And they never forget who caused the damage in the first place. Jake Morrison and his crew became the founders of Earth's first contact protocols. Their experience taught humanity that the galaxy could be a dangerous place, but it also taught them that humans had strengths that even they had not known about. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest or the fastest, but they were the only species that could take the worst the universe had to offer and use it to become better than they had been before. That was enough.